I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission for the City of Norwood. Before I call the roll, I would like to offer an amendment to the agenda. I would like the agenda to reflect that there is no Mr. Griffin present at this meeting. It's Mr. Weasel. Griffin is his first name, and he is the designee today for the Treasurer State's office. So welcome, Griffin. Are there any other amendments to the agenda?
Do we have the city auditor's letter on the agenda?
We do not.
Can we
Would
add
you like
that
to? Okay, we will certainly add that.
under new business, please?
Okay. We'll add auditor's letter. Okay, are there any other amendments? Okay. No? I would take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
I'll second that motion. On a voice vote, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The amended agenda stands. I will now call the roll. And again, before calling the roll, Mr. Shepherd did express his regrets. He unfortunately is traveling. His schedule seems to be in flux, so he's unable to make it, so I will show him as excused. I will now call the roll. Mayor Schneider.
Present.
Still Council President Miracle?
Present.
Okay, so it's still, okay.
Yes. Oh,
Up until the end of December?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Schwartz.
Present.
Mr. Weasel.
Present.
Mr. Jarvis.
Present.
Ms. Hanrahan is here. Approval of the September 12th, 2023 meeting minutes. They were sent out previously, but if I'll give you a chance to review, and I would take any corrections to those minutes. I would also go on to say that in this case, because we don't have a quorum, I believe, of the people who were present at the last meeting, I will just ask for acceptance of the meeting minutes at this one. So,
I'll make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes.
okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Schwartz seconds. Okay, Mr. Mayor Schneider.
Yes.
Council President Miracle.
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
Mr. Weasel.
Yes.
Mr. Jarvis. Ms. Hanrahan, yes. Okay, old business, new business. I have to state that I screwed up, Mayor, and did not include your resolution in the packet here. I, for some reason, thought it was attached to the minutes, and it was your letter.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you just wanted to go in your pleasure since you amended that section. You want to go in order as stated on the agenda, or?
I would say we would go as stated in the order that's
Okay.
presented.
Okay, then I would ask Anna Mary to speak to the bank reconciliation and the report on accounting methods, please.
On the bank reconciliation, we did meet with the treasurer's office and look at the progress that they had been making on the 2023 monthly bank reconciliations. There were some tweaks and things that had to be changed to more clearly reconcile the books to the bank. That has been occurring there. I think I have it wrong in here. It's really up through July. I put June, NE versus LY. I don't know why I did that. But anyways,
Okay.
they are reconciled up through July. We have looked at the bank statements and looked at the cash summary and did a cursory review on the surface of what's being presented and how those look. So they are reconciled through July. They are progressing through the rest of the months. Again, this does take time. They did have to go backwards and make some fixes that we wanted, so it was clearly being reconciled for the year. But I am seeing progress in that area. But it is not up through November yet, just through July.
Okay. May I ask on that? Previous to a lot of things, the new software system and so on, well, let's talk about it. As I understand, the city is having payroll processed through Paycor.
That is correct.
And is it still true that the file that Paycor sends is not being read or cannot be read by the new software system?
No, it can.
It can.
It is
Okay.
an upload that has been worked through, and that's been an upload for a while now.
Okay,
It
good.
may have some issues at times, but it is being an upload.
Okay.
So, partially, I guess. But much better than it was. So, but because of how that is uploaded, it is different than what it would be if it were on the system. So, the payroll side of the accounting system does different things than versus the non-payroll side of the accounting system. And because of the change, that doesn't allow for them to easily reconcile on the system. And that has been asked of SSI. And because of that, shift to the outsourcing is really not, you're not able to do it on the system as now. So the city is now in the treasurer's department working through a reconciliation process that we have established on our side. It's a little different, which is why there's some tweaks to it. It's not wrong, it's just different. There's different ways you can go about things. So they're doing it manually. We have looked at that, and that's the best course at this time because of how that is being outsourced right now. And it's just a tweak in the system. Is that something they can work with them on? That's a conversation with their Software Solutions Incorporated, SSI. So.
And is it SSI that they may need to ask to modify the system?
I don't know.
Or
how
is it
easy an
Paycor?
ask that is, because
Okay.
you're talking about, like, I can talk all day about accounting. I can't talk to you all day about computer programming. So it's really the two sides, it's the accounting world and the computer programming world that have to mesh for that to be allowable. And then you have an outside source in their file that has to be uploaded. So you've got three different things that have to be commingled to work in tandem. So it would really be a conversation, I think, between the city, SSI, and then Paycor, the outsourcing. So
Okay. But at least there is a remedy, there's a solution.
maybe, I don't know. That's a conversation.
Well,
we have.
Maybe not a solution,
we
but
have
they
a-
can still balance.
we have
It's
a
just a
solution.
time-consuming and
Yes.
hand process, manual process.
Is that
Okay.
journal entries? When you say manually?
So even when I have staff here, I usually bring 3 to 4, and it takes us all day just to get through revenues. And that is because of how things are done within the city and how they're recorded, timing of deposits. Because you can have on, different pay-ins that you have electronic payments coming in that have a different timeline, but they're on the same receipt that's recorded. Then you also have deposits for cash that comes into the city as well. Then you have cloud invoicing that takes some time that you see it, but then when it hits the bank. So you have some timing issues there. So when you go across months, that becomes reconciling items, but they might be all on one receipt. PAN is what we call a receipt that's in the system. So that becomes a little more difficult. You have to be hands-on. An expenditure is a little more clear cut, to be honest, because you either have a check or an amount going out of the bank because it's an electronic payment or transfer. Even with payroll, that gets a little difficult at times. You have different timing for your different payrolls, and some of that is the employer share versus the employee share. So you have the amounts that are coming out of the gross wages, then you have the extra amounts that the city has to pay for as well, and those are clearly defined. So the revenue side is a little more difficult, and that's what we take more time on as well, because you have to have all that documentation in front of you. There's usually 2 binders for every month. I'm talking like the kangaroo pouches that has to be gone through, and then you go through the bank statements. There are receipts for, you can have up to 2 to 3 bank statements that you have to look at to clear a receipt. So that's part of why that's not an easy check. And if you've ever looked at some of the bigger entities, you run into these types of things. So it's not a check within 1 hour and you're done. It's a long process. And when I bring people, we're only concentrating on that for a day. When you have people doing it in-house, they also have other duties that have to be done. So you have to balance that act. Does that make sense?
It's tough. I would not want to be the treasurer.
Is the payroll easier than everything else? It sounds like.
In the reconciliation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a standalone account, right?
Well, there is a payroll clearing account, and that is mostly for the employee side of things. And again, you do have withholdings that go out at a different time than the checks, because, you know, the state and the pensions and all that are due at different times. It's not the easiest. The easiest things is the non-payroll checks and the non-payroll expenditures out of the bank. That would be electronic. Those are,
Right.
unless there's a, you know, a mistype or something. Every once in a while, the bank might slide something through for a couple of cents differently. We do have rounding on the payroll side, because when you upload things, you know, there's rounding issues in the reports that you're giving to, like the pension systems and such, and then you might have to, your system does the rounding or Paycor does the rounding, but then the check is for a certain amount, so you may have a difference there, and you have to make sure that that all works out. I have that at other entities too. That is not an uncommon thing.
Okay.
Never heard of that.
So when you say you bring people in, you bring multiple people in, when was the last time you were in City Hall doing that work, reconciling?
Well, we're working towards the city doing that. We did the performance through 2022, so we have it on our side through 2022. We've been working with the treasurer's office and teaching them over 2023 to do the monthly reconciliations. So my person that I've been training and has taken part of that over was in contact with the treasurer's office up through last week.
But you haven't had people here in months and months doing that.
Do an
Like
actual no.
there was a group that came in, you had like 7 people that worked in the office back here to get caught up on previous reconciliations that were not correct. But you haven't had a person in City Hall in months
Do the
doing.
reconciliation. Yes, we've been in City Hall, we've been downstairs, we've been working with the person in the office side by side. We've done that for a couple of days throughout the year.
Okay, and have the city employees, we talked about the treasurer's office and how much of a challenge that is. Mm-hmm. Are they reacting to that training? Are they completing the task as necessary at this point? My understanding is that reconciliation is happening on a regular basis and they're balancing. But maybe I've got the wrong information from our treasurer's office. Is that
I
what
do
you?
not know what you've been told. What I can tell you is they are reconciled through July, and we have done a cursory review based on the documents that we have with the bank statements and the cash summary reports that come from the SSI system. And those do match. The things that were being done a little differently have been dealt with, and they have fixed that. That's why they had to go back through January. Everything has been met with great learning experiences, and moving forward, I've not had resistance in that area. The things that we've asked for change, they have done that and went back and did the work that had to be done, and they keep moving forward with that.
That is great news. And like you said, sometimes you get told things and what you think you're hearing maybe is not what you're actually being told. But it's great to hear that the treasurer's office and the auditor's office, they're both working on this and the reconciliation, because for years it was not. And that's why it took that whole team coming in here with April and all the extra effort to get to the point where we are now. But right now, up to July, you're saying that the state's office recognizes, and even in our internal office, we feel like reconciliation, when I say that, the treasurer's office, and that reconciliation between those two departments is working well. That's, I guess, my own quote on that one. So I feel like that's very encouraging. Thank you.
Anna Mary, we had been carrying an amount that we couldn't tie anything to. Are we still doing that?
There is an amount, I do not know off the top of my head, because I didn't look
Right.
at that. There is an amount that has not ever been able to be fully recognized what the issue is. They're trying to carry that forward. So what we asked, and we've talked about before, is to have the same carrying amount that is unknown, so that we know that you are reconciling each month. We're not expanding that amount.
Correct.
That has dwindled over the years and the work that we have provided too. But there is a small amount that would, well, I shouldn't say small, there is an amount that would eventually have to be written off and would affect the general fund.
Okay. Okay.
And
And it-
until we get completely caught up, I wouldn't even want to state what that is.
Correct. Correct. Okay. And so until they're completely caught up, we will continue to carry that amount on the books. And then at some point when everything is reconciled but that amount, then the decision will be made to write off X amount.
Yes, and that'll have to be an approval through council, through either an appropriation or resolution, whichever is supposed to happen legally. So, and then it'll be documented in the minutes. And then audit would have that for when they do the audit of that year.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Is there a threshold that amount is set at, or that's acceptable, or what we're thinking about?
No, there is no amount that's acceptable. There's no set amount across the board. We've had different amounts at different places. You have to look at the entity of itself. You also have to look at the work that's already been performed and the hours it has taken to even get to that amount. If we were talking millions of dollars, we would still be looking for that. I will say that. It is not hundreds, it's in the thousands, I know that. So that's another discussion that has to occur. If the city would want to go backwards that far and try to find it more themselves, they would be more than willing to do that. And but I would say you would have to have a timeline, because you would continue to have management letter comments on that, as they already do right as of now. That's been in the management letter for several years.
Brad, I don't mean to interrupt, but Brad, is typical in businesses, there is a certain amount of write-off that occurs.
Yeah, it's different. It's materiality based, you know. For me, it might be $500, something like that. And what I kind of hang my hat on is that it's not a matter of fraud. It's not a matter of anything like that. It's probably a fee, or it's something that, something that, again, it's a cost benefit. Is it worth chasing down and spending a day to find it? Or is that an acceptable threshold? Same thing for like expenses and capitalizing items. You got some kind of threshold that you use. For the city, it's going to be bigger than something that I use. But it's important to understand what that number is, because that number, like if I'm an auditor and I'm on the other side of the table auditing you, I've got thresholds that I'm willing to say, all right, this is wrong. It's not enough for me to worry about. If it's over a certain amount, then I make an adjustment to it. And if it's really big, then I think about, is it misstated? If it's material. So materiality is the big number, and then here is a scope, and if you have enough of these adjustments, it gets to be material. So that's kind of the way you look at it from 30,000 feet. So I don't know what that number is. I think it's right to say, well, when you get to that point, it's a cost benefit decision, and if we're comfortable enough and we know we've done enough work and we're going to keep, there's no end in sight, we just call up the dogs and say, all right, it's time, let's just move on.
Yeah.
And hopefully that number will be a smaller number than a bigger number.
Yeah, and I think what Anna Mary said too bears repeating. At some point, where in the past maybe they found like here or there, but it's been small amounts of kind of like chipped away at it. At some point, they're probably not going to be able to chip away at whatever the rock is that's in the way. And at that point, if they balanced everything but that rock, then it sounds like they know what they're doing. They're comfortable with the reconciliation. When that occurred and how far back is anyone's guess, but we just can't find it anymore.
Another
And then,
question.
That
Question two.
too, it goes towards the management letter, because you also have to address all of the findings on the management letter.
as well as the audit report.
And so if you don't have that finding because on the management letter, because you've already written it off, in other words, that's another time thing that you want to think about too. Not only reconciliation, but that rock, but also getting those management letters addressed and out of the way, because that is another impediment.
Is there a threshold within the management letter write-up that says that if you have these things, I mean, if we say we wrote off these items, we don't know what they are, what is the management letter going to speak to regarding that?
So depending on the auditors of choice, their materiality is set by their office. So for my office, normally, it is 7%. But because they're an emergency, we contract the audit out, so they're with an independent accounting firm. So their materiality and how they set those standards to meet the accounting standards would have to be addressed with them. So the piece I didn't state is we would have to have that conversation with their auditors before the resolution is approved to make sure that they are in agreement with that and moving forward and passing on that. So that would have to occur. What that materiality is, I don't know, because we'd have to have that conversation with them.
Yours is 7%, you said?
Most of the time, it's
7% of what?
7%. You look at the balance sheet and the statement of activities, the operating statement, and the statement of activities, or statement of net position, statement of activities. You look at the liabilities, the assets, net position, revenues and expenses. So for the statement of net position and statement of activities, that is all the governmental funds and internal service funds smashed into one for governmental activities, and then you have the business type activities, which they would have here because you have water. And enterprise things here. On the balance sheet, that is only the governmental funds. You have major funds that you have to look at separately. So the general fund is always major no matter what entity you're looking at. And then there's a calculation to look at your other funds to see if they are denoted as major. They do have other major funds here. I do not know them off the top of my head, even though I help with their compilation. And then there's a column that has all the other governmental funds smashed together basically as a non-major. So you have to look at each major fund and you look at each of those assets and liabilities and look at the net position, revenues and expenses, and then you look at the materiality of each of those, because they're all an opinion unit by themselves. The auditors have to give them an opinion on each one of those. So that's kind of how that works. That's a really brief nutshell on that.
So
So
7% of these various pools
Yes.
is individual materiality or
Yes.
scope for each of these buckets.
yes, and so because the general fund is a major fund no matter what, that fund will be by itself, and so we're saying that that is the fund that would have to have the unknown variance go to it. So the materiality would be placed upon the general fund itself and look at the assets, because you have cash, so that's an asset. That's also going to affect net position. Then you're going to look at whether we're going to hit a revenue or expense, depending on which side of that adjustment needs to occur. So then you would look at the materiality for one of those. So that's what the auditors would have to do in looking at this. So it's several pieces and parts.
Is your materiality the same for whether it affects income or whether it just affects the balance sheet?
Normally, they have one threshold for materiality, like ours is normally 7%. So whatever you can do it a little bit differently. That's why you would have to talk to the independent accountants that are performing the contractual work for their audit to see what they have to do to make sure that they're meeting the guidelines. That's a long-winded story of I don't know without talking to them.
Yeah, well, I was more concerned with what we look at. I mean, what they look at is going to be probably similar to the way you look at it, and the way we look at it. So that's why I was trying to drill down and say, do we know is he not 100,000? Is it 200,000? Do you have like a I mean, I would say guesstimate, but I mean, is it
I-
20,000? Is it 200? Is it 100? Is it?
I was just happy we got to a point where we seem to be consistently carrying it forward, which was the first loop, the first
Means it's old stuff.
Yeah, so that has also got to be looked at. Again, it's not in the millions of dollars. If we're in the millions of dollars, we still have to look because that means there's a big outlier that we should just absolutely see, even if it's several different things. So I haven't got to that point yet. I'm just happy that it's, we're not seeing more of unknowns.
stuff, yeah.
We're seeing more knowns being donated or mentioned, and then those need to be cleared. And then we'll step into that once we're caught up.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions on the reconciliation?
My question would be, what's the timeline when you look at that reconciliation and chipping away at that boulder to get it down to a pebble where you say, this is the number we can, you said you're at a sort of a, I don't know, I'll call it a stagnant point where you've got it to a number that's now carrying over and it's not growing, but we haven't been able to chip. At what point will you be back in to chip away at it more? Or is that where?
We have exhausted our resources. Our resources are now more towards let's get it caught up, let's teach, let's train. You're talking about going back to a system that is prior to the upgrade that was done. There could have been some issues in the old system, and I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong here. That was an extremely old version of the system because that was still SSI. Extremely old version. Like we're talking like I'm gonna be very 50s to 2020. Okay, and there were a lot of controls that used to be in that system that no longer there because the company was no longer servicing any upgrades to that system for a very long time. So when that happens, you got a lot of things that you can bump or do that you wouldn't have been able to with if there were new versions continuously. And even with upgrades to the system, keep controls in place. That wasn't happening for a while because they just weren't servicing that. At one time, they had one guy that could answer questions, if I remember correctly, and he was a retiree and was only available certain times. So that is also not good for a city to have only one resource to then talk about issues in a system that is very, very old and not up to date. So you went from that, which is what we have to go back to, and we'd be pulling reports. There's no more, I don't think, on the system. And you couldn't dive into some reports that we've found because you don't have that old version anymore. So it would be very astronomical to go back and do now.
So if I understand you properly, if the city continues down the path it is going right now, which is reconciling and working to continue to keep that stagnant number there, then we're on the right path.
Yeah.
And we will come up with, at some point in the near future, we'll come up with, this is what it is, and write that part off, and let's move forward. Make sure we continue doing what's necessary. Don't ever get back into that where we weren't reconciling for years, right? I mean, isn't that what April's team came in and worked on years worth of reconciliation? And like
Our
you said,
team worked on that, yes.
Yeah,
We picked a year to start.
yeah,
We didn't even go all the way back. We picked a year to start, and then we moved forward from there. And then we're doing monthly reconciliations.
Yeah.
We started with the old system. We were in with the new system. Payroll was on the new system, and it was outsourced. That definitely was a hurdle for us as well in learning. So yes, we have spent considerable time here at the city in trying to help with that. And there is progress being made, but that's being done to catch up to where it's done monthly.
and I know it's appreciated because the treasurer has talked about that and the auditor's office. They're very proud of where we are now and the path that we're going forward, so that's good to hear. Okay.
If there's no, yes.
I had kind of a long-term question is, we're sitting here, we're in December, reconciled through July 2023. So we've got months to go. What is our timeline for catching up and getting it like, we're reconciling by the 10th of the month or the 5th of the month, or how far away is that? Or do we know?
Is that a
personally don't
question?
have set timelines. I don't know who you're addressing. We don't have set timelines,
Well,
we're
I mean,
looking at the progress, so.
I guess, I hate to be the devil's advocate or the bearer of bad news, but we're sitting here and we're 4 or 5 months behind reconciling. That's not gonna happen overnight.
Correct.
When do we anticipate we're gonna get to the point we're caught up? We're really caught up. We're not carrying forward something, we're reconciling and it's day 5 and we've reconciled the accounts for the month, the previous.
It's hard to say, just simply from what I'm hearing anyway, there's a manpower issue on both sides, both the city, the treasurer's office, because they have other duties. Their only duty isn't balancing the bank statements. And then the auditor's office has a lot of different clients as well. So I don't know that, I mean, both parties want to get it done as quickly as they can. It's just that because of the nature of each month's reconciliation, it's very time consuming. So
I mean, I guess we're sitting here and we're talking about, I know the mayor's gonna present a letter and, that seems to be a big obstacle that needs to be taken care of, first and foremost, before we can talk about getting out of fiscal emergency. I mean, from my
We have
perspective.
Auditor Stith is here, and also a representative from the treasurer's office. If we want to hear from them, these are the people that are.
Yeah, I'm just saying before we have that discussion, I mean, this is good, it's good progress, but we're not near the finish line on this. On doing, a bank rec, if you ask any company, they say, I haven't been reconciled for 5 months, people are gonna look at you kind of funny and say.
I'd like to hear.
"What's going on?"
I'd like to hear from either Tim or from the auditor.
well,
on
why
that.
don't we go a little
I
further?
mean, I can table that till we have the discussion, but I'm just saying, this is kind of a big item.
We're on that point in the.
I would agree. I would agree. There's other points as well.
Sure.
I think we need to speak to the report on accounting methods. So Anna Mary, if you would.
Okay. In front of you is the summary of the report on accounting methods, which has the sections, the comments, and where things stand. Not a lot has changed since the last time this was presented. We did have staff come in October, like I said we would. We did look at certain sections, we had conversations, we really hit the capital asset inventory sections hard with some things there. We, at that time, also talked to the treasurer's office when they had questions and worked through some stuff there. So most of what we saw the last time together, I haven't really changed anything. Nothing else has been marked clear. There's still a lot in progress because we would see some things that I'm not ready to move it to finish. There is a couple still not addressed yet. So the biggest area that we saw some movement in was we saw with the Norcom and those who have been working on the assets and inventory, they will need to be doing stuff again at the end of the year into the beginning of next year with inventory, just like they did last year. And then combining sources with the auditor's office and really meshing what they do with what the auditor's office has in capital assets. And then the reconciliation is a point in here. We saw progress there. And then we just haven't looked to see if anything is signed off on because I haven't had time to come down and look yet, but that's going to occur. I'd rather see it in person than scanned because I like to see the actual signatures than a photocopied signature. I'm old school audit that way, especially when we're in fiscal emergency. So really those are the two areas I've seen the most progress in. I have not seen any new policies other than there is a new investment policy that is being addressed. I did give feedback on that, even though they have passed one that I said was good. I know they were looking to make some changes. I have not seen a new version of that, so I don't know if that was approved yet or not, but I haven't seen a new one. I knew that that was in the works. I had cleared that one, but I know there's a draft out there updating a few things, which is not a bad thing. Just because you pass policies and procedures, that doesn't mean things don't change, and you don't have to look at those again and update them. We've talked about some things already where they've had new systems and they've outsourced, and all that stuff needs updated in policies and procedures.
Sure.
So that's my brief summary on the report on accounting methods.
Okay. Were there any questions on the report on accounting methods?
I find I always feel like this was sort of, Ken, your push to get these things done, and I see that a lot of these items are showing in process, was tested in June, was tested in 21, after draft, and I realize a lot of this takes time. I mean, time to test, time to put them in place, and then time for them to run the course, and then like you stated, we're coming towards the end of the year, so asset inventories and different things have to be completed again. Do you have any, and Ken, you have anything to add on some of this?
No, I don't think, Anna Mary and I have been talking, I don't think I have anything more to add than what she said. I think that was pretty clear. We do have, out of the 34, I think 8 have been cleared, 24 in process, and I think there's one that hasn't been started yet, but I think they're continuing to, as she said, continuing to test.
I think
Over this year.
it's important to clarify that in process could mean it's completed. The city's work is completed.
No.
It is in process being testing, meaning that they're looking to make sure that we're following the process that was put in place. And you say no, but the verbiage in here says tested in 2023, found that they paid late rent. There's many instances
So
where it's
there's
absolutely
testing
yes.
and we found issues, so I would not say you're cleared. I would have to test and not find issues.
Well, that's in process. So
So
when
that's
you
in
say no
process.
to what I'm saying
I'm
is,
giving you credit for working on
Okay,
things.
let
I'm
me-
giving you credit for drafts on some things. I'm giving you credit that I'm seeing some improvement in the areas that were not good when we did the testing. But there are issues still in some of these areas that I would not clear them as today.
and I don't think I said that. I
No,
said
but I
that,
was
I
clear.
said, I was clarifying what your in process, what it, where did this one come from? Is this?
The
from you?
auditor's site.
So I'm clarifying that when you say in process, when you state in process and put that these are things that you have to give a gold star to say they're done.
Correct.
And we are making improvements as recommended by you, and we are making headway on this on a regular basis.
Improvements I will give you, implemented I will not give you. So improvements I would agree with you, but you had stated implemented, and that's not the case. That's why I
We're not
corrected
going to
you.
argue semantics on in process, but what I'm clarifying is that the city has and continues to work on these to make improvements. The administration, the treasurer's office, the auditor's office is still committed to making these improvements and to fixing them and making them even more robust with your guidance. And we continue down that path. There hasn't been, when you say, there hasn't been any change since October, there have been changes. You said there weren't changes since October, but then you talk about the investment policy that the treasurer's office has actually passed and you approved, but then the treasurer's office said, wait a minute, well, this could be improved upon. So there's constant work being completed. To state there hasn't been anything done since October is
I
disingenuous
never
to the
said
process.
Anybody didn't do progress since October. I said we tested in October, and I'm giving you an update from that point of view on what we tested.
Oh,
And
that's
I
what
can
you're saying.
see progress since October when we were here, plus the conversation we've had with the treasurer's office in regards to the reconciliation, which is the top priority to get done, let alone the other report on accounting method comments. Then we were here and tested heavily in October the asset and inventory comments, and we saw the progress that was there. And I was stating that we need to see an annual inventory done again, like they did last year, to keep that progress going. Not that I say that there's no progress since. I said we tested in October.
Okay.
Any other questions on that report? Okay, Mayor, I'm going to hand it off to you. I don't know, we had kind of tabled the auditor's letter. I don't know if you wanted Mr. Stith to address that or if you wanted to discuss it.
What do you mean you tabled the auditor's letter? There
Well-
was never a vote to table anything.
For the meantime, Mr. Schwartz had brought that up as far as we were talking about reconciliation. You brought up the auditor's letter, and we said,
I never brought up the auditor's letter. I said, during the reconciliation discussion, I said, we have representatives from the treasurer and the auditor's office that can talk about reconciliation. It had nothing to do with the auditor's letter.
okay, well, would you like to go on now to the auditor's letter?
I would, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I received a letter and I forwarded it to Ms. Hanrahan to ask for it to be included in the
I did not.
agenda packets. And I think all of you received this. There was a typo that Brad pointed out, and I still state, this is not my letter, this is the auditor's letter, and I think it's good information for the Financial Recovery Commission members, the sanctioned commissioners to recognize. Jim Stith is here as the auditor and the person who produced this letter, and I'd like for Jim to have a few minutes to talk about this process and where we got here and how, from his understanding, since he's been the auditor for 16 years and wrote the letter, if Jim could have a few minutes' time.
I have no objection. Does anyone else object?
Mr. Stith, if you,
Sorry, there was a typo in the letter.
I just pointed out at the very last sentence in 2017 and should be 2018, says 1018. That's all. I just wanted your letter to, if it was going to be submitted, that it was
Fat fingers.
no legalese issues or anything.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yes. Can I just read the letter so that it's anybody watching can see it? That would be
Got the
fine.
floor.
Yes. Okay. Dear members of the Fiscal Emergency Commission, this letter is written in explanation as to why the city of Norwood should no longer remain in fiscal emergency. The information and amounts provided from the fiscal emergency analysis, initial internal records, previous FRPs, and 2023 projections based on year-to-date amounts. Attachment A included as a reference for some of these amounts. The city of Norwood was entered into a state of fiscal emergency in 2016 due to cash flow and budgetary deficits found during a fiscal analysis by the Auditor of State's office. At the time of the analysis, June 30th, 2016, the total unprovided portion of the aggregate deficit funds was negative $260,040 for all funds. The general fund was not found to be one of the funds in violation. The funds found to meet the threshold for fiscal emergency, which are still monitored in the FRP, are the Street Fund, 2002, and the State Highway Fund, 2003. While the general fund is in the FRP, it never met the requirements of ORC Section 118.03B for fiscal emergency. Please refer to the State Auditor's Fiscal Emergency Analysis, June 30th, 2016, Schedule 4, page 10 for detail. 2016 was a tough financial year for the city as it struggled with decreased revenues, large bond debt with a balloon payment due in 2016, increasing retirees' healthcare insurance costs, and labor agreements which were no longer affordable. The Ohio Police and Fire Pension Plan, OP&F, had also changed its billing from quarterly to monthly, eliminating a 90-day grace period and adding an extra payment over the next 3 years. The city was not able to catch up with these billing changes and entered into an agreement with OP&F in 2016 for monthly extra payments until we were made full. All funds had a positive year-end cash flow since 12/31/2018, as noted in the tables below. In the general fund, the city is projected to have a cash carryover of more than $10 million for 2023. This is planned for use for major infrastructure improvements and upgrades to improve the quality of life of our citizens. The city of Norwood undergoes an annual outside audit of all funds, which is then approved by the Ohio State Auditor and published on their website. In 2016, the audit was found to have only 2 compliance findings. In 2017 and 2018, it was found to have only 1 compliance finding in each year. And for the 4 years, 2019 through 2022, the city has had no compliance findings, granting it completely clean audits. Many positive changes have come from our state of fiscal emergency. Funds have been consolidated and streamlined. The accounting software and payroll practices have been updated. Departments have been evaluated and changed to meet the needs of the citizens, and a 5-year forecast is prepared every year with plans for future expenditures and capital projects. The city has created written policy and procedures for our employees and for our accounting practices. The accounting software has been updated to meet modern requirements, and payroll is now run online using an outside vendor. During fiscal emergency, the city paid off its general obligation bond, restructured the retirees benefit plan, and to get out of the healthcare self-insurance business, paid the agreed amounts to OPNF, negotiated labor agreements, and restructured city services. It was able to outsource dispatch to the county, expand its services in planning and economic development. The city of Norwood has long-term plan and clear visions for its future. In summary of the issues presented, the general fund never met legal requirements for fiscal emergency and has a positive cash balance since 2018. The funds which were found to be in need for fiscal emergency, which have had positive balances since December 2016. The general obligation bond debt was paid off in 2021. The city utilizes responsible budgetary practices. Since 2019, the yearly audits have had no compliance issues, being awarded clean audits. OPNF payments remain current, and the city has restructured departments for better yet cost-effective services to our citizens. In my opinion, considering these other facts, I believe the city of Norwood should be removed from fiscal emergency. There is an attachment A that shows balances for cash balance at the ending year for 2016 through 2022 and an estimate for 2023. The revenue of each of the 3 funds that are currently in the fiscal plan, the general fund, the street fund, and the state highway fund for each year. Also a breakdown of the major costs which were corrected, which was the general fund bond payments, dispatch cost, and the retirees' healthcare costs for the city. Do you have any questions related to that letter?
I do.
Yes.
You put together this letter, and you have worked with the city through this fiscal emergency. And you've been the auditor all these years, and you worked very closely with the administration through this whole time. The previous mayor, you worked very closely with them to get us out of this situation. Would you agree with that statement, or would you agree that just in the previous 4 years, the progress that's been made is substantial and hard work has been done, that the administration and, quite frankly, the treasurer's office and the auditor's office take a close and very responsible fiduciary responsibility to the city and to the community members that live here. I mean, one of the things that I feel like we've been working on for the last 4 years is those things that you outlined, but it didn't start just in the last 4 years. It started prior to that. We just made great progress and great strides in the last 4 years.
I'd say that both of the administrations that I've worked with went a long way to correct this situation. That the previous administration was in a very tough spot because we didn't have the cash flow. I mean, we're looking at a $10 million carryover this year. That's huge. We didn't have any. We had a negative cash flow back then. We were looking at, right before we went into fiscal emergency, month to month. Actually, every 2 weeks, we were meeting with the finance committee deciding which bills we were going to pay because we couldn't meet all those requirements. With the huge general obligation bond debt that was due, you look at 2016, just one bond payment in 2016, $1.6 million that we had to come up with bonds that were structured back in 2003. Restructured from 1996, restructured in 2003, passed in 2004, with this huge balloon payment that we had to pay. And that really was difficult. The other big thing was the restructuring of the quarterly payments for the OPNF. The pension payments are huge. And if you're being billed them 90 days in arrears, and there's a 60-day grace period to pay them, it's real easy to all of a sudden be 4 months back, and then the state changes its mind and says, well, you're going to start paying every month. And to get caught up, we're going to add an extra payment each December for 3 years. That hit at this same time. So we were trying to get caught up where we were, as allowed, 4 months behind on the pension payments. We now had to be current. So we made a deal with them to get caught up, and we got caught up. But all of these things needed to be structured and needed to be dealt with, and they were. And now the city is in a much better place. We actually have the bureaucratic infrastructure that exists, the people here doing the jobs to get things done for the city, to fix the water system, to fix the streets. The people are here to do the work, and it's because we have the revenue now. And it was a revenue shortfall and an expenditure issue that we had that no longer exists 7 years later. So what more can we do? What more do we need to do? And let's come up with a plan to come out of this. Because again, the general fund did not meet the obligation to go into fiscal emergency. If you read the fiscal emergency analysis, you can download it from the Auditor of State's website. I have a copy of it here. It was close to meeting the threshold to going in, so we were put in. But it was really just a handful of funds. I mean, the amount that we were negative that we actually qualified for was $260,000. $260,000. I know that they're working towards reconciliation. I don't do reconciliation in the auditor's office. That's the treasurer's office. And I know they're working very hard on it. What we work with the treasurer is balancing the books between what's on the auditor's side and what's on the treasurer's side. We balance that every day. You go back 2 years ago, just as recently as 2 years ago, we didn't close the month out till the 15th of the next month because they were trying to balance. December closed out on the 1st. Every month for the past 6 months, it's been within the first 3 or 4 days of the month it's closed out. Because we balance with them every day, because we've got that good working relationship. And that's key. Now, how that reconciles to the bank account, that falls into the treasurer's realm. But when I know you're talking about this amount, my understanding of the amount that's unreconciled, it goes back way before I was auditor, way before the previous treasurer was in. This is a small amount of money that goes a significant distance back. So what we look at, it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, when you look at all of the funds, we met fiscal emergency on all funds by $260,000 7 years ago. If you look at the reference material that I sent, we've had positive in the general fund since 2018. And positive amounts at the end of each year, growing $8 million, $9 million. This is not a city in trouble anymore. This is not a struggling city. We are not a municipality on the edge as we were in 2016. We are a thriving city that can provide for our citizens and that has grown through the time of fiscal emergency because we needed it in 2016. I don't think we need it in 2024.
Any other questions for Mr. Stitt? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have, I actually have the fiscal analysis emergency declaration here. And yes, you are correct in that. And I will agree with you. The city has made great strides. You folks have done an excellent job, so very well appreciated.
Thank you.
Now, because I'm rude and forgetful and old, it's a total 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. But I have with us sitting next to the financial supervisor is Elizabeth Fligner. She is the counsel to the Financial Planning Commission here. She has been assigned through the Attorney General's office, Dave Yo's office. The one thing I will preface before I have maybe Elizabeth address some of the statute is I will say that we, the commission, are created in statute. And everything that we do is guided and restricted by statute. The way it's worded in statute, section 118.27 addresses the continued existence of the commission. I believe I sent that section out. It's written sort of backwards in my estimation, my humble estimation, in that it doesn't say this is what you do to get out of fiscal emergency, but basically says once a commission goes away, you're out of fiscal emergency. So it's kind of not straight ahead sort of thing. But I would say that while the city has made great strides, and continues to do that. I would say that for us to go away, the city has to meet certain obligations in statute. Beth, I don't know if you wanted to address, I would look to 118A3.
Yes, if you go to the statute 118.27, A3, that's in the case of a municipal corporation. It is under letter A, planned and is in the process of good faith implementation of an effective financial accounting and reporting system in accordance with section 118.10 of the revised code. And it is reasonably expected that such implementation will be completed within 2 years.
Okay, and the 118.10, that section refers to the report on accounting methods.
Yes, and you guys reviewed that.
And then I guess B and C goes on to say, if B addresses good faith implementation of correcting and eliminating all the fiscal emergency conditions. So that would be basically you went in, not detailing each of the funds, but basically you went into fiscal emergency because you had deficit fund balances. You don't have those deficit fund balances any longer. You also have to meet the objectives of the financial plan. I don't know if I have the financial plan in front of me. I do not. But those have to be addressed. And you also have to have a financial forecast for a 5-year period. And on that 5-year forecast, an opinion must be rendered by the auditor of state that the financial forecast is considered to be non-adverse. In my estimation, I kind of hang my hat on 3A, and this goes to the report on accounting methods. While you have made great progress on that, I also went back to previous agendas, and I sent out an agenda review that the subject of bank reconciliation and report on accounting methods have appeared on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 agendas, the earliest going back to June 22nd of 21. So we have had this discussion about the report on accounting methods, the bank reconciliation, and this has been an ongoing theme of this commission since then. I did note that on 4/27/21, the report on accounting methods was listed under report of financial supervisor, so I suspect that may have been when we first discussed the report on accounting methods. So that was when the report had been issued, and we went over it in commission. Okay. So what I'm hanging my hat on is that it's been over 2 years, and we still have items that are on the report on accounting methods report. I don't know, given that we've had this discussion for approximately 2.5 years, that we can reasonably expect that such implementation will be completed within 2 years. Not at this time. Am I saying that it can't be completed earlier? No. I'm just saying at this time, I cannot reasonably expect, given the information that I have, that this will be checked off and everything will be up to date and taken care of. Now, yes, it's very important that the city has addressed its deficit fund balances. Absolutely so. But time and time again, what we have found is whatever's on the analysis, the declaration, only says, according to the code, that we can put you into fiscal emergency. It doesn't really say how you got there. And to me, how you got there goes back to the report on accounting methods. Because had you have had a good financial system in place, and you had reconciled, and you had been doing these things all along, that you had policies, you likely would not have been in fiscal emergency. It would have, if anything, it would have shown you earlier the path that you were going down. And that path isn't necessarily a path that you drove on. There are intervening variables that help drive you down that path. Like Jim mentioned the balloon payment on the debt. The change in OPF&F on the grace period that they would give you. That wasn't your call, but it's something that you had to face. So I get that. But what I am saying is that I don't think you are close to being out of fiscal emergency. I cannot, in good conscience, vote for you on that resolution to get out of fiscal emergency. Not at this point. Ask me a couple months down the road, given more of these things and bringing the bank reconciliation up to date, we can have that discussion.
So are we now on the agenda part where it says mayor's resolution?
Yep.
Okay. So, Mrs. Flagner, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Last time, we didn't have a legal representative of, and one of the reasons why I provided that resolution to Mrs. Hanrahan well before this meeting was so that you could take a look at it and read and research, which apparently you've done. I hang my hat on this 11827A also. For some of the exact reasons that she pointed out, planned and is in the process of good faith implementation. What you maybe did not see was my previous letter that went to all the financial recovery planning commission members, all the commissioners. And when I say commissioners, I don't use that loosely. I mean, these are people that were appointed to make decisions for the state auditor's office as we work through this process. And as a commissioner, you are sanctioned and you have the ability to vote on things to move the city forward. And that's an important aspect of what I take as really a role that I'm put in as the mayor, and Ken puts in as the president of council, and citizen membership, Brad, absolutely, and the Hamilton County Auditor's Office and the state office. Those are all, we have a role to play here, absolutely. What my letter stated, Ms. Flegner, was that there is, not only has there been major process improvements and major strides forward, but there's also just a recent election that will put Ken in as the auditor. I continue as the mayor for another 4 years. The treasurer will stay in that position for multiple years after that. So I don't know how much more the three of us can say we've got a good faith, we are moving in a good faith implementation of all the work that we've done. I have committed, and I know these two have also committed, to continue the progress that has been made. So when Sharon brings up, she said two things at the last one, and she said in good conscience, and I understand that. She said, we did not vote to go in to fiscal emergency, and we're not going to be able to vote out of fiscal emergency. This group was not in place when the city was placed in fiscal emergency. This group did not take a vote. You're absolutely right. We didn't vote to go into fiscal emergency. That's not how it's set up. But we are set up to make decisions later on. And we should be able to do a resolution and take a vote to go out of fiscal emergency because we're sanctioned to do such. That is what this Fiscal Emergency Commission and me being appointed as a commissioner on it is part of it. So I think that's an important aspect. And the other part of completed within 2 years, well, I'm not going back to 2006. I didn't ask to get out of fiscal emergency in 2016 and say, hey, don't worry, we got plans in place. In 2 years, everything will be all better. I'm coming to the commission now saying, now we need to be out of it. And within 2 years, if we relapse or if there's something, I don't know why, but we're going to have these things implemented in 2 years. In 2 years, we'll have that pebble of reconciliation or that rock, or whatever you want to call it, of bank reconciliation. We'll have made a decision on what we're going to write off and what's stable and what's there. And it's not like when we go out of fiscal emergency, all of a sudden, oh, the city's free and clear. The state auditor's office isn't going to come in and say anything to us because the state auditor's office comes into every municipality just like they do the school boards. And they look at the books and they look at where we're at. They continue to oversee. There's a lot of oversight within this. So, as we talk about this, I firmly believe that we as a commission, and you had stated it wouldn't be by a vote, it'd have to be by resolution. That's why I said, let's put together a resolution. And I have copies of the resolution. I know it didn't go out to everybody, but I have copies that we can pass out. Would you mind taking those over? I firmly believe that we have the ability to take a vote and to move the city out of fiscal emergency. Now, Ms. Flegner, I know I sort of sound like I'm on a high horse or getting on my soapbox, but this is important to me. I feel like we've moved in the right direction. We continue in the right direction. We're committed to it and good faith to move forward, and that's why I'd ask for this resolution to be considered and provided to you so that you could read through it and the commissioners, the people who are sanctioned to make these decisions, could actually read through them and recognize, good or bad, where we're at. And I am not throwing the auditor's office, the state auditor's office, out of the city. We will continue down the path and continue to utilize their resources for the help that we need.
So that you understand, and maybe we didn't really discuss this, the resolution is part one. That doesn't mean we go away as a commission. You are still in fiscal emergency. You are still in fiscal emergency after this resolution, if it is approved in the affirmative, because the auditor of state's office has to go in and test to make sure that no new fiscal emergency conditions have occurred. So they have to test that. They have to do a status report. You can't get out until your management letters have been addressed, and you continue to have management letters because your bank statements aren't reconciled. So please don't misunderstand that a simple resolution is going to get you out of fiscal emergency. It will not.
You stated at the last meeting that you are not the legal, you're a lawyer, but you're not the legal representative of this commission. And I understand that. And I think that's your opinion. I don't know that I agree with that opinion. From what I'm looking at here, it says that planned and is in the process of good faith implementation. An effective financial accounting and reporting system is reasonably expected such implementation. So, and I think you are sitting here as a legal representative for the commission. Do you agree with that we can pass this resolution, but we wouldn't be out of a fiscal emergency until the state auditor's office does their testing? Again, that testing, which I don't see anywhere in here where it legally says that there needs to be testing and that the state auditor's office has to agree at that point. I've read through this, I didn't see that.
Under
Can
letter
you,
B and C, those conditions need to be satisfied with certification, and then ultimately a final report. So I think this sounds like, I understand, I hear both of what you're saying, and I understand that it sounds to me like there's been an awful lot of strides, but I think it would be, I mean, you know, you still have a bunch of other conditions. I know we're talking about subletter A, about good faith implementation. That's just one part of this. You still have even if you pass this resolution, you still have to have it certified from the auditor of state and governor and commission. All this still has to occur in
Where
order
do you
to
see
be
it?
out of fiscal emergency.
where do you see the governor's office?
I'm sorry, I just was reading as I went, sorry.
B and C.
Request by determination by governor or the commission or be made by the auditor of state upon the auditor of state's own initiative, so.
That's to get in, that's not,
No, it is not.
so now we're stating that the governor's office is also going to have to be involved in, is that what I think that's what you guys are saying, that the governor's office is now going to be involved in getting us out of fiscal emergency.
It says maybe determine, it says or, there's an or in there, I just read it as I was talking, so you can read that directly yourself. We don't need to play words, but you can read that right there. Do you have the statute in front of you?
I do. I have it
Okay,
in
so I
front of me,
was gonna say, I have
yes.
to bring it over to you.
What I read is, he may, either by the auditor of state or by the commission, and shall be certified by the commission, the auditor of state, the governor, those people. So,
We would have to certify that the conditions for the termination of the existence of the commission exist.
and, you know, realistically, okay, let's do that. Let's pass the resolution. Let's get working on that. Let's get moving forward, because I don't want to go another 4 years as mayor with the city having a $10 million carryover, putting all the hard work, all the efforts that all the people you see sitting in this room have done, and us be under fiscal emergency for multiple years after this. I see no
And I
No
don't,
benefit to
I don't see you being in fiscal emergency for 4 years either. But I do see that you need to reconcile your bank statement right off that, whatever that amount is, so that you don't have management letters. I don't know how the commission can certify that you're all in the clear when you've got management letters outstanding.
I don't think that my resolution states that the city is all hunky-dory and everything's in the clear. My resolution states that there's progress being made that will continue to be made, and that we are committed to continuing that progress. And that is what I consider to be a good faith. So that's the part where I say the commissioners, I feel like the commissioners, we should agree to this, we should vote on it, it should be approved, and then we look at the path forward. Like you said, it's not like we're taking ourselves immediately out of fiscal emergency. Okay, well then, let's move this forward and start that path.
Sharon, can I speak to the termination?
Certainly.
Okay, I do believe that my chief of the region sent you some examples of reports of municipalities and others that went out of termination, and the termination report that is required to happen. You received that,
Right.
correct?
Yes. Is that a report that you're saying that the mayor's office or the
It was
administration
an
puts?
email that my chief sent to you directly, because he said that he would do that in the last meeting. And I do believe he sent you an email with links to reports for termination, correct?
He did send me that email, and my question back to you was, is that a report, is that something that the administration are putting together?
No.
Or is
no.
that,
I will
okay,
continue with that.
understood. And that's my point being made. I recognize that.
Right.
That was sort
So-
of it wasn't rhetorical, but it was to clarify to people who are listening and here,
Yes.
that it's not something that happens from
No.
my office.
No. So I'm saying that we provided you with an example of the termination report that is required and is done by my office, at the Auditor State's office, by my staff, because we are this regional, that we do that. In that report, you should see it laid out, because we are giving you examples so you can see them clearly of how that report is done. The very first thing is actually the report on accounting methods. And in there, it states the comment. It will state whether it's implemented, partially implemented, not implemented. We want all those implemented. It also discuss how it's implemented, partially implemented, or not implemented for every one of the comments that is in the packet that I gave you. So that's part one. Part two is actually the audit report and management letter. You have had a management letter long time, every year. There are some compliance issues that are stated in there. And one is the reconciliation, and there has been in the last 2 years budgetary compliance issues as well. There's also recommendations in there and comments. And the two that are ongoing in there is security passcodes, which is something that has been in there since before 2018, because I went back. And also a disaster recovery plan, which is actually one of the comments in the report and accounting methods. It's not been addressed. And that is to make sure if something were to happen, that you can financially still be up and running with backup and move forward. There's nothing written to date yet for that one. The third part of that is the fiscal emergency conditions, which are the 6 that were originally tested to put you in fiscal emergency. That has to be completed too. It's not just that your fund balances are positive. We will also look again at payables to make sure there's nothing not being paid that would go against your balances to then make them meet some of the conditions. Then the last thing is the financial recovery plan. It's really the 5-year forecast. That would have to be updated and show where you are currently with all the things that we do every year to put a recovery plan in place. Those are the items that have to be addressed in that termination. That is what my office has to prepare and present and make an opinion on. So that is what the termination report is, which really comes from this Ohio Revised Code and the certification to come out.
Once the report is put together,
Please step up to a mic so other people can hear you.
so just to kind of expand a little bit more on what Anna Mary just described, they will come in, they will put the report together, they will do all the testing, the 5-year forecast, the report on accounting methods, the whole 9 yards. They will put the report together. The report then comes to me for review. I make my questions, corrections, whatever the case may be. That report then goes to our chief, who's David Thompson. He will then review the report to see if he has any questions, corrections, whatever the case may be. Then that report goes through a third review, which will either be at the chief deputy's level at Auditor Faber's level. I don't know exactly who reviews it. They will also come back and ask questions, corrections, whatever the case may be. If at any point in time in that review process, someone can say, you don't meet the criteria to come out of fiscal emergency, no matter what that is, if it's a 5-year forecast, if it's you have not cleared enough of the report on accounting method comments, if they do not like the assumptions that are in the forecast, they can make the decision not to release you all and say you have to come back and correct all of these things before we will even consider reviewing it again. We've had this happen. So once everything goes through the reviews and everything has been corrected and everybody agrees that yes, the city is in the position to be released from fiscal emergency, then the Auditor of State's office is the one that will come down. They will provide you with a letter, or they'll provide you, a lot of times they have a plaque, whatever the case may be. At that point, then the city will be released from fiscal emergency. Now, what I can tell you is with all the work all the things that I see from the report on accounting methods that are either still in progress, things still need adjusted, or things that are not in progress that haven't been implemented yet, from past experience, you'll never make it past the reviews. Even though fund balance wise, you look great. Financial forecast wise, I haven't looked at it, but from my understanding is at least you seem to be on the right track to continue to move forward in a positive way with positive fund balances, making good decisions that way. The report on accounting methods still has too many things that are up in the air. It still has too many things that are not implemented. Because of all the ones that I've worked with, I think we've let a couple through that had in progress on a couple of the report on accounting methods. But Anna Mary is right. We want to see all implemented. Because that then guarantees us you have things in place, you have the policies in place, the procedures in place, you're doing the right things, you're reconciled, whatever the case may be. We know at that point you have everything that you need to do to be successful moving into the future, not only from a financial and fund balance standpoint, but also from a policies, procedures, and the way you're approaching things standpoint. Any questions? Thank you.
I have a quick-
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is there something like a diet version of fiscal emergency or something that we can move to, or is it 100% in or 100% out? There's nothing in between?
There are 3 levels of fiscal analysis. One is fiscal caution, one is fiscal watch, and one is fiscal emergency. So fiscal caution is the, for lack of a better word, least severe. Fiscal emergency is obviously the most severe because you have so many more things that you have to account for. You can go from from a lower status to a higher status. You cannot go backwards. So once you reach fiscal emergency, you're in fiscal emergency until you're out.
You can't go to watch.
That is correct. You cannot go
Get enough
backwards.
to get to watch. Okay.
The reason I can stand here and say that is I have an entity that started off in fiscal caution. We gave them, I want to say, roughly 1.5 to 2 years to fix things with our assistance. They did not get things fixed. They were elevated to fiscal watch. So the things that they would have had to have done in fiscal caution was just fixed a few things that they needed to fix. Now, because they're in fiscal watch, not only do they have to fix those things, now they also have to do a 5-year forecast, which was not required under fiscal caution.
So a lot of it sounds like it has to do with playing ball as well. And kind of, we asked you to do this, you didn't do it, so
Right.
we're going to do what we're going to do.
And same thing with fiscal watch. If you qualify for fiscal watch, you have the criteria and the things that you need to do. If you do not do those things, here we go again. The auditor's office can upgrade you or downgrade you, however you want to look at it, from fiscal watch to fiscal emergency. Once you get to fiscal emergency, you're in until you have done everything necessary to get yourself out.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just maybe a comment. It really is not the Auditor of State's office objective to put entities in fiscal emergency. I've seen some entities in caution and watch, whether they be school districts or local governments, that have been in that category for a while, because maybe there's been some progress, but they're still stumbling. Maybe they don't have the right people in place. Who knows? There's lots of different reasons. But it really isn't an objective, because honestly, not that fiscal watch and caution is just a breeze for the Auditor of State's office, but certainly when they have an entity in fiscal emergency, it is much more work. So they'd rather work with you ahead of the game, maybe not offer that technical expertise, and hopefully get you on the right path.
Just to kind of follow up real quick on what Sharon said, we had a township that they made audit adjustments. They had over $120,000 worth of audit adjustments to their general fund. Their general fund, in the click of a button, went from $60,000 positive to $60,000 negative with a punch of a button. I talked to my boss at the time. I said, look, we have some new people coming in. This was something that happened to them. Can we give them the opportunity in fiscal caution? Because they qualified. There was no question about it. They had reconciliation issues, obviously fund balance issues, so on and so forth. I had the request to say, can we try them in fiscal caution first? I think we have a board that is willing to do what is necessary to get themselves out of fiscal caution. That occurred, and I think it took them 4 years, 5 years. They remained in fiscal caution, but you could see they were slowly making progress. They didn't have to do a report on accounting methods because they were in fiscal caution. We got them reconciled. They were able to reconcile themselves, and they fixed their fund balance issues, all while in fiscal caution. They had 3 things they had to clear. They cleared all 3 of them. They were released from fiscal caution.
And what is this 2 years? 2 years is kind of getting thrown around in the current sense and the past sense. My original understanding is we had 2 years when we were put in fiscal emergency to address these issues. This is dated September 15, 2014. and
Oh,
talks
that's
about-
when the revised code was in effect, that
Okay,
section.
so it says, planned as in the process of good faith implementation of an effective financial accounting reporting system in accordance with 118.1 of the revised code. It is reasonably expected that such implementation will be completed in 2 years.
Okay, so because this is a statute on continued existence of the commission, the 2 years really comes into play when we're looking to terminate. So technically, not all of them have to be implemented, but you have to be in good faith and understanding. And again, it's a call that you cannot have you can't have a long laundry list of partially implemented and not implemented. So there have been cases where we went forward with termination with a couple partials, maybe one not implemented, but knew it was coming, that they were going to fix it. So we went ahead and did the termination analysis, did the report. There were partially implements and maybe 1 or 2 not implemented, and we're talking like years ago with some of those fiscals. You have 2 years to fix those, once that termination report is
After
done.
fact, okay.
That is the 2-year thing. If you do not, technically, in my understanding, and somebody can correct me, is that you can be fiscally sound, you can have everything going really well, but if you did not fix those within the 2 years of termination, you could go back into fiscal emergency on not implementing those alone, is my understanding and what we've been taught going forward. So the 2 years is really from the termination report from our office, and it is on those report on accounting methods at that time that are impartial and not implemented. That is a good reason why we look at those things. We don't want a long laundry list. It has taken a long time to get those done, even with the same personnel at those entities that I've dealt with in the past, to get those done within the 2 years. And we had discussions of putting them back in. That is not a fun discussion. Nobody wants to put somebody in emergency again when they have healthy balances. That is not what we're trying to do. But that really is the 2-year intent that is stated within this. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking about the continued existence of commission and the termination.
And to give you an example of the in process, in a specific case that we would have done that, we had a township that they had cleared everything. They had done all their policies and procedures, they had their 5-year forecast, they had everything lined up except one thing. And they had one comment they had to clear in the report on accounting methods. That comment could not be cleared, because we were looking in September of October, that comment could not be cleared until January, because it had to do with them filing information with the county auditor's office. So we put them in, or we took them out. We said, yes, you're going to be released from fiscal emergency. The 2-year rule kicked in, and in January, I was down there saying, hey, did you get this filed? I was talking to the county auditor, did they get this filed? Once they got it filed, that cleared the final comment that was needed to be cleared. The 2-year rule ended that day. They were done.
And we actually do a letter we have to monitor to state that you have
Yes.
closed out and that you are no longer under the monitoring process from fiscal emergency from our office.
But that's just an example, more recent example to show you kind of, okay, this is why we would do something like that. They only had one comment left to clear, not 24, 25
If they
later.
didn't clear it, they would have gone back to fiscal emergency.
Yeah,
Not
if they hadn't cleared it in 2 years, then yes, they could have gone back in fiscal emergency. But that's where me being over it, and because it was actually in very close to me, I was not only on them as a reminder, I was on the county auditor as a reminder. So I had both of them communicating with me to make sure that they had their information filed with the county auditor the way it was supposed to be filed, so that we could actually clear the comment. Any other questions? Sharon, thank you for the time.
Thanks. Thank you.
Can I just make one more point
Yes.
just on that? To the mayor, you were talking about testing and, good faith implementation of these things. From an accounting perspective, and you can probably echo this, in order to have an effective accounting and financial reporting system, you have to look at the design of the controls in place, and then you have to test the controls. So you can't deem it, the word effective means something in an auditing standpoint versus, yeah, it's effective, it's working. No, effective is a technical term used to define what was done to prove that it is deemed effective. So that's kind of a trademark verbiage that refers to something pretty specific.
So I work for a company, much like you work for a company, and we have staff that work within that company. And every person who's in charge of staff makes sure they do their job and do it properly. That's the goal of having a supervisor. That's the goal of having a hierarchy and an implementation of people that are checking those things. So when you say that, I guess you're implying that we need to have the state auditor's office working in the city of Norwood at all times to oversee our financial processes.
What I'm
That's
saying
not
is
what
in
you're
order
saying?
to meet the threshold where they deem it, and this is a accounting type threshold, the word effective means we've looked at the design of the internal controls related to this, and we've tested them, and then we monitored them to make sure they're continuing to work. You have to do those things in order to deem that piece effective. That's all I'm saying.
I think what you're saying is,
from
and what I'm saying is trust but verify. Trust but verify. You're absolutely
That's
right. You
a good
trust,
way of saying it.
you trust the people that you hire to do the job, to do it properly, and you verify that they do that job properly. What I'm saying with this resolution is, we don't need the state auditor's office overseeing these things right now, because we have people in place that are qualified that do that. And that's my biggest point of this is that we've got an auditor and a treasurer that run those operations and understand, and they've been through this process and they understand how it's supposed to be done. I think what you're implying is that you'd asked the question previously in the previous meeting, like, well, who monitors this stuff? Well, they monitor us constantly. The state auditor's office is in every municipality. They're in every school board. They're constantly busy. And then one of the challenges that we have is the state auditor's office has such a caseload, such a workload, that they can't that Norwood's not on the front, it's not on the front burner for them all the time. It goes on the front burner for a short period of time, probably preparing for these meetings, and then back off the front burner. And it's the workload that they have. I mean, we were talking about having the meeting now, and it's like, well, can you do it? Because you got all these school audits and different things going on. They're constantly monitoring us, and that's something. I mean, the auditor's office, the treasurer's office, they know their feet are held to the fire when it comes to this stuff. So, the implication is that we've got to stay under a fiscal emergency to do our job right. That's not true. That's not true at all.
Yeah, well, I agree with that completely. I'm just saying the process has to be the process. And you have to go through the steps, and monitoring is one of the steps. Now, monitoring ultimately is going to be internal monitoring. You're going to have some other person, whether it be Mr. Stith or whatever, monitoring and making sure those controls are still working. And, and if other auditors come in, they may test the effectiveness or what have you. But what you're saying is, see, these people are doing their job. They know how to do it. They want to do it right. That's the trust part. You got to have the verified part. The verified part is them verifying the controls are in place and all these are working effectively, so that when they say, all right, you're good, we're going to send the ship out into the world, that they trust that you have monitoring and you have the verification, you have the work being done on the front end, and then the back checking on the back end, and then timely reconciling. That's all part of it. If you're missing one of these pieces, it's not effective. So that's kind of how it has to go. And they're the judge, jury, and I won't say the other word, but they're the ones that have to basically bless us to get out of this. So that's why they're here. And maybe the best way to do it is to, rather than, and I'm not sure how this process goes for them coming out and reviewing, maybe we go through every one of these and get every one of these done, and then call them in and say, we need you for 3. And now, again, it may not
Come
be
on,
realistic.
Brad, you're making, these are subjective
I'm just
to whether
trying-
they're done or not.
I'm trying to
They
help
could
you.
that could go on for 3 and 4
I'm trying
more
to help
years.
you organize their schedule, because if they can only come out for a day and look at one thing, and then it does, okay, well, we had issues. Okay, well, then you gotta stop and wait again. If you bring them out and say, we've done 8 of these, we'd like you to look at all 8 of these, or at least here, ball's in your court, that might help you get these things done quicker because their schedules are so busy. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. McCoy made the point of, he wouldn't let them out on that one. He could have let them out and said, well, with the 2 years, you have to have this done, and made sure they did it in that January, which he did, which is great. But he could have made that decision earlier, and then over the 2 years, made sure that project, but he didn't. And that's the problem, is this is very subjective to who's the person who actually makes the decision of whether we've completed it or not. And then, well, wait a minute, that audit only happens once a year, so it's going to take, I want to make sure it works next year too. That's 2024, but we can't, let's wait until December, because that's when it'll be January of 2025 before we can verify and write that off. So these things are all items that our staff are working on a regular basis. They get paid, they're in Norwood every day, they pay attention to those things. But there are items in this that you're saying, well, let's finish out. It's not that simple. She's made it clear it's not that simple. She has to see it operate. She has to come back and verify it. Those are things that I'm saying we don't need the state auditor's office. They need to come back and verify it once a year, and they can say, these are the things I want to see. But right now, we're being held in fiscal emergency, and we'll be there for, when you talk about the calendar, I mean, we meet, every 3 months, maybe every 6 months normally, but that's not something that, I feel like we keep on going back to this accounting methods thing, but we also recognize, well, it takes 6 months or it takes 8 months before that system's running, before you can go and verify that it's working. Well, let's just keep adding on that, and then maybe in the next 4 years at some point, we'll be able to look back and say, yeah, we've done it 3 times properly, and oh, wait, we missed one. Mr. McCoy should point out, we missed one. Something happened here. Sorry, you stumbled. We're not letting you out.
I mean, I think you're accurate in saying some of these might take 6 months, but what it sounds like I heard from him is that if we eliminate everything else, and we've got a couple of these, maybe if there's a couple that we gotta wait 6 months on, that he goes through the motions that he did before. I mean, when I look at this one, number 26, the spreadsheet used to track infrastructure should include the useful life of every asset listed. Still has assets with 0 useful life. I could fix that myself in 5 minutes. So why not eliminate that one? Eliminate some of these
Brad,
other easier ones, and then
you are
come into-
you are oversimplifying something that's much broader than that. You're
I
telling
mean,
me
that's, come on.
you're going to
now.
go find
Zero
every
useful
culvert.
lives, they don't exist.
In 5 minutes,
So-
you're going to go through and say this culvert's service life lasts this long. This bridge, the service life only lasts this long. These are assets of the community, and it's much bigger than what you say. And it's a when you
This
say
is
you
a
can do that in
basic
5 minutes, it's
accounting
ridiculous.
rule. You don't have 0 useful lives. I mean, if they have no book value, they run out their book value. But to list something with a 0 useful life is not proper account. I mean, so I look at that and I say, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's a slam dunk. That you could fix that in a day, 2 days. You go on the computer and you assign lives. And then you have an adjustment, you make the adjustment, and it's over. I mean, I'm thinking if there's a couple that we need to wait on, you can knock out several of these other ones and try to, if you do more, I think you get better use of their time. That's all I'm saying is maybe it'll help us get out of here quicker. But I understand your frustrations regarding the schedule, and we're not the only ones in town that need their attention. But, I mean, I know a lot about internal controls, and I know a lot about management comments. I've written tons of these letters. I know how it works. And so I'm not blowing smoke.
Well, I requested this resolution to be put on, which is the commission this is the Financial Recovery for Planning and Supervision Commission resolution, commission to remove the city of Norwood fiscal emergency designation. I'd like it to be considered. I would make a motion that we have a vote on this resolution. I would make a first.
Okay, and given what has been said by Mr. McCoy, you still want to do that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so the mayor moves. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay. I'll ask for a vote. Mayor Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Miracle?
Yes.
Mr. Weasel?
Abstain?
Okay. Mr. Jarvis?
No.
Mr. Schwartz?
No.
Ms. Hanrahan? No. The resolution does not pass.
Okay.
Okay. Anything under old new business to discuss? Then I would look at setting a new meeting date and time. When does the next financial recovery plan in March, end of March?
End of March.
Okay. That's due, but you'll need time to review it
Yes.
and look at like the 5-year forecast and stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a council meeting on the 12th and on the 26th of March.
Okay, but that would then give, so in other words, you're saying emergency? We could pass on emergency? Not 3 readings?
I mean,
Oh, you're saying
if
just to
it goes
go
in
for
front of city,
approval?
city council normally approves it prior to,
Yes.
although it's been reviewed by, the city council
Yes.
approves it. I'm saying they would approve it, maybe it would go in front of them on March 12th and be approved on the 26th, and the Financial Recovery Commission would meet on the 28th.
That doesn't give the financial supervisor much time to review it.
Well, she would
Should-
review it prior to it going to council.
Should the
she
council
would.
make any changes?
They haven't in the past.
Yes, they have. On my request.
Okay, well then, it's going in front of council on the 16th would be the first time. I'm sorry, let me make sure I'm on the right, the 12th on the first time to council. If there are changes, they would be made prior to the meeting on the 26th, which is 2 weeks later. And then the Financial Recovery Commission would meet on Thursday, the 28th.
That is not a lot of time for you guys to review. We'd have to have the official from them. We did meet in April last year for the commission, but it has to be approved. I want to say it's the 27th or 26th, it's around then, for the recovery plan.
It would enable you to send the approved by council version via email to the commission, and then we would need some time to review it. And if we had, that would allow us to formulate any questions we might have, things of that nature.
So the first meeting in March is on Tuesday, the 12th. Are we saying,
I would be looking at Tuesday, April 2nd or April 9th. And the 2nd is really not giving us much time, but
we need to do this in March?
The recovery plan has to be approved by council in full, but even last year, the commission met in April to do the final approval.
yeah.
But that was pushing it back.
No, we just have to be in receipt.
Yeah,
And if you send it to us in March, when it's due,
This all goes right back to, and I
It's in
I
the
feel like
statute.
we've
It's in the
hashed this
statute.
multiple times. The further it goes into the year for the Financial Recovery Commission to approve it, the further it goes for us to get contractors and get work completed. We work, there's a season where we can get work done. All the financing, all the money has to be approved prior to us engaging any contractors. And we continue to hinder the city's ability to get good contracts and to save, quite frankly, save money and to get work scheduled through the season where we can get work done. So that's why I talked about that last time. We don't want to push it back. If anything, we'd want to push it so that it gets to the committee earlier. They can look at it. I'd love for it to go to the committee prior to the March 12th meeting, so the Financial Recovery Commission can look at it. Then it goes to City Council, and they have that 12th, and even if they can push it back and do 2 readings and do it on the 26th. But you're
Okay.
saying push it back to April.
So it can't go to the commission until it is through council. So it cannot go before because it needs to be the final
Okay,
version.
well, I apologize.
I have to
I mean
have
going to you.
time, I have to have time to review it, and the earliest I have ever gotten it is sometime in February, and we have a new city auditor coming in and new people working on this FRP, which they're all overwhelmed, they can call and talk, but the person who has put it together for several years now will no longer be with the city at 12/31, or 1/1/24. Okay, so I have to have time with me and my staff to go through that. Many questions. You've been on several of those emails before or asked tons of questions to make sure that that FRP is shown correctly. Now, in regards to coming into this year, I just reviewed the 24 appropriations for all funds and made sure that you are in compliance, amended certificate wise and appropriation wise, and you're in compliance with the FRP. And then we have taken out the outstanding encumbrances that you have at this time to make sure that you are in compliance. When you turn in your ending balances for the year, you will get a new amended certificate, and at that time, you can increase your appropriations for the encumbrances that have come off and you have more available balances, but it stays within the FRP. The FRP has capital projects already in place, all of that stuff for 24 that was considered last year for payroll projects and so forth. So the only thing that you would not be able to do is if you have projects that are new, that you don't have old coming off, you are still able to go forward as a city, and because we are approving tonight as council, permanent appropriations for the full year, you are able to do encumbrances and contracting for the year.
Okay. What's the date? April, you threw one out there, Sharon.
The 9th?
9th?
Can we do 9:30, just so don't have you guys waiting for me?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that we sort of said that would be our standard, didn't we? All
Well, I
agreed
don't
that
know.
9:30 was okay?
I mean, okay, all right. All right, so, next meeting, April 9th, 9:30. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it. Please, let me make that. motion.
Okay, do I have a second? Who second? Mr. Jarvis, okay. On a voice vote, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.